Welcome everyone to another episode of Peter and Code. I come to you after a long period where I didn't upload any videos because I was mostly focusing on blog posts to present to you a little video about how to generate an Elixir library using ChatGPT-4, which just came out a couple of days ago and it seems to be really powerful. So I thought I would give it a go. And today's project will be to write an Elixir wrapper around the LemonSqueezy API. LemonSqueezy is a payment processor which has been quite popular these days because I think they're a merchant of record, so they take care of all the taxes for you, which is a bit better than what Stripe offers you, where you have to take care of the taxes yourself. And LemonSqueezy has an API that is very easy to integrate with, so I thought I would use ChatGPT to speed up this process of writing the library, which would usually take like a day or two maybe, and hopefully do it in like 15 minutes or less. Let's see, let's get started. All right, so I have the LemonSqueezy API documentation here, and I will use only a single endpoint now for this video, which is to retrieve the authenticated user. And I'm going to copy paste all of this documentation simply into ChatGPT and then ask it to write an Elixir library around it. So first of all, I also created a GitHub repository for this where I will publish the code if you want to find it later. It's called LemonX, and I will also link to it in this video. Now let's go to ChatGPT. I have the Plus account and I can choose ChatGPT-4 here. I find it cool that they added a little overview of the characteristics of each model here. So you see that GPT 3.5 has inferior reasoning to GPT-4, but it's much faster. And GPT-4 has slower speed, but it's more concise and has better reasoning. So let's choose ChatGPT-4. And I'm going to go back to the documentation. I'm just going to copy and paste all of this. Whoop. Okay. ChatGPT-4, I'm gonna just paste it in here. And now I think I can ask a prompt here, or I can make a prompt by having these three dashes. And I'm gonna ask, generate an Elixir library called LemonX that wraps this API endpoint by LemonSqueezy, and enter. Now, the cool thing about ChatGPT-4 is that it really goes step by step. It explains in detail how to create a new Elixir library, for example, or the project, that I have to add a couple of dependencies. I see that here we use the HTTP poison or HTTP poison library for fetching the data. Maybe I can change that later to rec. Let's see. Yeah, what I have to do, fetch the dependencies before I can run it. And here it comes. So it found that it successfully named my library LemonX, and it gave it the namespace LemonSqueezy. Interesting. Really cool is here that it also sees the necessary API headers that we need to send. So we have a simple bearer token here, but we also need to send the JSON API header and the content type header. And it just adds that by default to the endpoint here. Now, it also, which is cool, creates a struct for me, so I can easily pass the response into a struct that I can use in my library, which this would actually take a lot of work, just manual copy, paste, and formatting work to find out what are the fields of the user object in this case. But this does it all for me, so pretty cool. Let's find out. And to test the LemonX library, open the file and add the following code. Okay. Oh, we even have a test here. That's pretty cool. Well, it's called test, but it's not a test file. Okay. And even shows us how to do it. Well, it got cut off there, but let's have a look at the code. So first of all, yeah, it's cool that it added all these headers. We see in the documentation, actually, here, it says that it needs to have these three headers with the API key and so on. Then, yeah, it adds it automatically, but yeah, we need to add the API key here. So we don't want to have that for every single endpoint where we have to pass in the API key. It should be a general configuration. So let's maybe add that first. Let's say factor the library to accept a config variable for the API key instead. for the API key and use it in every endpoint. Let's see what happens here. To refactor the LemonX library. So we need to open the config. Okay. Oh yeah, our API key, cool. And modify the LemonSqueezy thing. Okay, now it's gonna regenerate the whole module where we fetched our authenticated user. Okay. Okay. In the endpoint, it gets the application environment. So that's an upgrade already to passing in the API key here, which we don't want to do. We just want to have it as a general configuration. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, it also explains what it did. It fetches the API key from the configuration to test the Lemon API, open the, and so on. Okay, we don't want to see that. Not sure whether... I'm gonna let it run to its end. I don't want to interrupt here because I want to do another thing. I want to tell it that I want to refactor this library to have the headers and do the actual request in another module called request. And to be honest with you, previously, before I did this video, I tested this before and it did that. But I think I gave it a better prompt. So let's try it now. Because what I want to do now basically is we have the get authenticated user endpoint here, and that's great, but I don't want to have all that setup and handling of the response in here. I just want to have basically the endpoint here, like it should generate the endpoint, and that's basically it. All the other stuff should be handled in another module. So I'm going to ask that. Generate a new module called request, where you add the request headers and handle the response of the API call. Okay. Right, now we get the request. Yeah, now it moves all the API base URL in there, the headers. That's cool. Get headers with the API key. All right. It's really funny to see that, you know, this could be a junior or media developer in your team, and they make a request, like a merge request or pull request, and you review it and you tell them exactly these kind of things, like, please refactor this module to be more like that, and so on. And then they would go back and do it, and maybe a day later come to you, and yeah, with ChatGPT, you can just tell it what to do, and within 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you have your answer. And hopefully we can just copy and paste it later into our library and see where that works. So it's also gonna regenerate our LemonSqueezy, the request. Oh, let's see what it does here. Oh, actually it does, yeah. It uses the request module. It hands in the API key, but I don't think we need to have the API key in here. So as a very last step, let's maybe refactor that and move the API key into the request module as well. Please, always be nice to AIs, you never know. Please move the API key, the fetching of the API key from the configuration into the request module. I'm gonna capitalize this. Okay. And okay, we got the LemonX request module. It's also, I like it that it regenerates the whole request again. I mean, we have seen this before, but it makes it much easier eventually to just copy the code into your library. You have the whole file, you can just copy paste it. Otherwise, you have to stitch it together if it would only show certain parts. So that's pretty cool. Actually, yeah. Okay, now it only showed us the rest of the code. We have to actually stitch it together, you know, never mind what I just said. But yeah, actually it did what we wanted to. It moved the API key into the request module, and the LemonSqueezy wrapper, it only does the request get here. It doesn't fetch the API key anymore. Okay, now we got the request here. I'm not entirely sure. This should be part of the other module, I think. Maybe it moved it. Yeah, we have two modules here, so I'm not sure why it cut here in the middle, because it did the second part here. But this is good enough for me, to be honest. I'm just gonna copy this code. I'm gonna go to Visual Studio Code. Oh, first of all, of course, I have to follow the steps that it told me here. So I have to do mix new. Oh, let's see what happens here. Yes, I want to. All right, I'm gonna do mix new LemonX. Here we go. Let me move myself out of the way. And yeah, we got this. And what did it else tell us to do? CD into it and then add the HTTP poison and the JSON library. So I'm gonna do this, gonna go to there. And these are the steps. Boom. All right, now we should fetch the dependencies. I will do so. Okay, and now we can add our modules. So I'm gonna just go to the very latest version of it. I think that was this one, yeah. I'm gonna copy paste this code in, and that's the LemonX request. So I'm just gonna move into lib, and in here I'm gonna make a request folder, module file, and I'm gonna copy paste the first part and then also the second part. I can remove this and this. All right, let's see what we have here. We have the request module. It fetches the API, the URL. It has the appropriate headers. It adds these headers, and it also fetches the Lemon API key. And whenever it does a GET request, it gets the header, it stitches together the URL, it makes an HTTP poison GET, and yeah, now we're missing the handle response. And that one was in here. So we're gonna do the handle response. All right, so what it does also, it handles the response if it's an okay. And which is really cool here is that it understands the HTTP poison library. Like it understands what it returns, that it's a response, it has a status code, it has a body. This is amazing, honestly. I find this really amazing. So then also it decodes it. I mean, it doesn't quite handle here if we can't decode the body. You know, we could ask it to change it. And also the other thing is it always returns the user from the JSON API here, which is not the case. Like we want to only return the body and then want to handle the JSON to struct transformation in our request module. So not in this request module, but in the one where we actually make the request. Okay, yeah, so whenever something happens that is not a 200, we get something went wrong. And if we get an error, we also inspect the request error. All right, this is not bad. Now let's copy and paste this one here. And I'm not gonna put it into a LemonSqueezy thing. I'm gonna call it user. And I'm gonna make it so LemonX and just user, I guess. Also, I'm not sure where this string comes. There was the, oh, yeah. Right, so we had the schema struct basically in here, this one. I'm gonna copy paste this one and I'm gonna call this, well, I'm gonna make a folder called schemas. And in here we have the user and LemonX schema user from JSON API. Yeah, it also understood that the attributes, like there's a nested JSON and it fetches the attributes from there. I'm not entirely sure. I hope that we will always have all these fields returning. Otherwise we will have a match error here. So for example, if the LemonSqueezy API would not always return the created at timestamp, then we would have a match error here. In the previous version where I asked ChatGPT to generate this, it did something smarter. It had just attributes and it did it like this, where, oh, not the ID, sorry, the name. You know what I mean, like this. Where it fell back to nil if this field was not present. So this was better, but this new version, it has a couple of things. And I think that also highlights a little bit that you can't be blind about these kind of things. You still need to evaluate the code, refactor it, and so on. But just writing all these lines of code was so much easier using ChatGPT. So we got the LemonX schema user. We have the LemonSqueezy, I'm just gonna call it user, like this, I guess, and like this. Now, what we want to get back from the request is like this. And then I want to do the from JSON, what was it called? From JSON RP. And the body. Yeah. So Now let's see, if we get an error back, we will just populate it up. That's fine. And from the request, I need to change it that we don't return this, but we only return the OK and body. Okay, I think this returns OK body. Yeah. Now, what else should we do? Now, ChatGPT told us how we can test it. So I would say let's test it out. First of all, we need to add in the configuration file here where we don't have it. Config. Oops. We need to add what it told us. Where was that again? Here. Simply this. And I'm gonna replace this with system get env. Yeah. And I have a LemonSqueezy API key in my environment variable. So this hopefully should work. Okay. Now let's see what it told us, how we can test it. We can simply test it by, I'm just gonna ask it again. How can I test this library from an .exs script? Okay, create a new file. You can name it whatever you prefer. Thank you very much for that. And inside here, we alias the LemonSqueezy. Oh, it actually understands that we need to start our application. That's pretty cool. And it gives us another module where we can test. Yeah. Okay. All right, and now we can just test it with that. This is really cool because honestly, I, as an Elixir developer, don't work that much with scripts. I rather write modules and everything all the time. So I'd rather work with Phoenix applications. So this is really interesting for me to see how I can create a script where I can simply test it out, right? This is something I'm not doing every day. I would need to look it up, you know, how to actually run something like this. And ChatGPT just tells me. So that's pretty cool. Now, let's do as I say. Maybe in here, we're going to do like test API. And here we're gonna alias the user, and it has the get authenticated user. Get authenticated user and spec user. All right. Wow. Let's give it a try. So I'm gonna just clear this for you. Let's see what happens. No file name test lemon. Oh, yeah, of course. I do Elixir, and then we had the test API. No match of right-hand value. No such file or directory. Oh. Oh, the app. Okay, I'm just gonna copy paste this into here and see what ChatGPT has to say. My apologies for the oversight, since we are running an Elixir outside the context of the mix project. The dependencies aren't loaded as expected. Okay. The dependencies aren't loaded as expected. This is unexpected to me. So we are creating a new mixed library just to test this out. I don't like this. And we have the mix, but we can, you know, this is again a thing where it only tries to help us and we need to figure it out ourselves how to fix it. Ideally it would do it for us, but you know, it's only so smart. So no, we don't want that. Okay, thank you, ChatGPT. I'm just going to stop the generation here because what it did, it told us to create a new mix project, but I don't really want to do that. So I'm just going to take a quick break here, check it out myself, and I will come back with a solution for you. All right, I had a look at the code and it's a small error that ChatGPT did. And if you look closely, maybe you've seen it too. So if we go into the code and we look at our request module here, what you see is that we get our headers, we create our headers here, but ChatGPT created tuples that are basically duplicates. So we have, on the left side, we should have the key of the header, and on the right side, we should have the value of the header. But ChatGPT made a mistake and created everything like a string for both, and then added the string here and added the value once more. So in our case, I want to do it a bit more clearer. I want to do the key value pairs here. I just want to fix them basically. So let's do bearer token, and in here we simply have accept, and in here we have content type. Okay, now I can remove these two. Also, one thing I did now for the sake of demonstration in the schema, I yeah, don't set the email, the ID and the email, because I don't think you need to have that of me that later. So let's recompile. And I also find a way to test this. I just open up the IEX console with, IEX-S mix. And if I do now, I can actually go back. I want to do lemon user, get authenticated user. If I execute this, bam, it works. I got a very nice user schema here. So we passed it into an Elixir struct that we can now use. It has a name. It should also have the ID and the email, but I commented this out for now. And I also have a very random gravatar. Yeah, so that's it. Basically, we can now push this into our GitHub repository, and we already have the first endpoint. And I will use ChatGPT in the future a lot more to generate these libraries for me, because this is very nice. This video was actually longer than it took to generate this, because I also was speaking a little bit. So we see that within just 15 minutes, we created a new project. We created the first endpoint, and we can start using it in our Elixir application now, which is pretty cool. All right, I hope you liked this video. And if you want to hear more about me, you can follow me on Twitter. It's PJ Ulrich, ULLRICH, and I will see you there. Have a great day. Cheers.